Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners! The Sounders rule the region! Seattle Sounders is campeón! All creatures great and small.
Rothrock going to collect it. He does just about. Runs into the advertising awning. Low to our left. Ball goes in. Oh, what a cross! And what a goal!
Where's my copy?
I got a bunch of them in the car. I'll get you some.
You're handing them out for free already.
How many
cost on them?
$50.
I'll Venmo you.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. I am Jeremiah O'Shan. It is Friday. We are at the beautiful Sounder at Heart studios. We don't have video today, but I do have Tim Foss joining me, filling in for Nico Moreno. How's it going, Tim?
It's going great. We're getting into the part of the year where Seattle is the genuine best place in the world to be. So
yes, on days like today.
Hard to complain too much when it looks like that outside.
I know. You know, it is funny. I constantly find myself checking myself when I tell people this summer when the World Cup is here, it's going to be amazing weather. And then I have to remind myself that a lot of it's before July 5th. So you don't quite know. But on days like today, hardly anywhere else I'd rather be.
Yeah.
But you went to training this week. You saw some stuff, so we want to talk about that. And let's just start with some of your observations from training today. You noticed a couple things that I don't know that we have quite talked about too much.
Yeah. First, watching training, seeing that just about everyone who's been questionable or some non-Pedro de la Vega out designation on the availability reports over the last 2 weeks, really. Everybody was involved. I think we saw Jamar was fully involved. It's the day before a game, so training is relatively light, but yeah. He was doing everything. Kim Keehee, Albert Rusnak, Christian Roldan, Paul Arriola, they were all fully involved. Ryan Saylor was off on the side, but he was out there. Even had a Nikola Petkovic sighting, which is a little exciting.
Yeah. He's been, I saw him earlier this week he was like on the side doing a cycling essentially. And my understanding is that he is going to be rehabbing here, at least for the foreseeable future. And the Sounders are interested in potentially bringing him in. I don't know that they are. I suspect they are trying to get a negotiated transfer fee. But his time with the Sounders is not yet over, I guess, is what I'm getting to.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I was trying to look at his current contract situation, and it seems somewhat ambiguous. I think because he's still on his U22 deal, which was signed before there was a sprint season and then a fall to summer season. I think his current deal runs through the end of the 27-28 season, or the end of the 2027 year, midway through 27-28. So, maybe with some of that uncertainty, Charlotte will be a little more willing to just get something out of the deal rather than end up with a guy who they don't really like. He doesn't seem to love being in Charlotte. Maybe that works out for everyone.
Yeah, I would imagine on some level, if he's able to return in time for the sprint season, like if he's able to sort of like if he's on the Paul Arriola schedule where he's able to basically participate in training and potentially play for the entire sprint season, I would think that's a much more enticing situation for the Sounders than if it looks like he's going to be out until the 27-28 season and then you're only buying him for half a season, yada yada. You can see how that might not be quite as intriguing, but those are matters for another time. That the Sounders are looking relatively healthy is more in the immediate interest. I still don't know that Paul Arriola or Albert Rusnak are going to start this week, but just the fact that they are potentially available, clearly a good sign.
Definitely a good sign. And, the positive there with, even if neither of them can start, the way the team has looked with the personnel available, you're a little bit more comfortable easing them in, especially, Schmetzer was pretty adamant about this is a possible trap game against Sporting Kansas City.
That both of his availabilities this week.
They're
all three, I guess, if you include his time on KJR, but go ahead.
I mean, he was very clear that, that's a manager who knows how to set his team up. They have good players. They just haven't executed. It's
I don't know if I agree with him on that.
I don't really agree with him either, but I think better to give too much respect to a team in that situation than not enough.
We don't have enough coaches saying, actually, I think their roster is trash, their coach is trash, their front office is trash, and we should go in there and win 5-0. But short of that, I think that's the right approach.
Yeah. So, the way guys have been playing, you feel a little bit more comfortable. Jesus Ferreira seems to have taken a little bit of a step forward. If you start him at the 10 for another game and give Albert another game to work his way back to being really ready to start from the beginning, Paul Arriola, less of a locked in starter, even if he is healthy. So even easier. But if you have Jordan playing really well on the right and Paul Rothrock is causing problems from the left, again, you're a little bit more comfortable giving him some extra time to work his way back.
Yeah, I go back to, I think it was 2023 was the first time where the Sounders really started to lean into this idea that, look, if we have depth, we need to use it. And the way that most clearly manifests, I think, is in the way that Brian Schmetzer is bringing players back from injury, where it's almost unheard of at this point, where if you aren't doing a full week of training, you aren't starting that week. And I think that's sort of at least early in the season, he's sort of set this precedent that, look, if you can train at the end of week, we'll get you in. But if you're missing important sessions where, especially when they're running 11v11 sessions and going through tactics early in the week, you can see why they don't want to do it. And also it does give you, like you alluded to, it gives you another chance to see Jesus Ferreira at the 10. He looked good in the previous game. It gives you another chance. I still think there is the most open position, I think, right now is still the number 9. And it's partly because no one has really claimed it, but it's also because no one has really played their way out of the picture entirely either. I'm sure the Sounders would love to get Danny Musovski going. They would love to see Osaze De Rosario continue to get going. And maybe Jordan is the starter there. And he might, I think you and I probably both agree that the platonic ideal is Jordan Morris starting at the number 9. But if he's looking good on the right side and that you have another weapon, another clear scoring threat up top, that's good for the whole team.
Right. There's also the fact that no one has played themselves out of contention for the number 9 spot, but because of injuries and availability, you've also had this ongoing circumstance where maybe Jordan is your best option at the 9, but because of who else is available, he might also be your best option at right wing, because Jesus Ferreira otherwise would be your best option at right wing, but he needs to slot in at the 10. And there are all of these cascading decisions that have to be made in concert. And I agree. I think all things in their best circumstances, Jordan probably is the guy who gives you the most as the number 9, but playing him on the right and having either of Musovski or De Rosario, and Schmetzer specifically said we need to get Musovski going, which is understandable. If a guy scores 18 goals for you across all competitions a season ago, you want to see if you can replicate at least some portion of that. But being able to, Jordan can then interchange, and the formation can be a little bit more fluid depending on game state and possession, and maybe it plays more like a 3-5-2 or whatever. It gives you that extra flexibility, but also makes it a little bit less clear of what really is, if Kansas City away was a playoff game, where would these guys be lining up? Harder to make that estimation from the sidelines at this moment.
Well, and I think it's I don't know if it's ever been harder, honestly, to make that estimation right now. I mean, if we project forward 6 months and we're talking about potentially having a healthy Pedro de la Vega, a potentially informed Paul Rothrock, a potentially informed Jordan Morris, Jesus Ferreira, you go down and I would say there's at least 12 or 13 outfield players who you feel like you can envision a way where they are part of a best 11. And I did a poor job of phrasing this to Schmetzer today. I was able to sort of like recover and phrase it better in the second attempt. But what I was trying to get at today with Schmetzer was the sort of asymmetrical nature of the position battles, where it's not just Alex Roldan competing with Tino Lopez or Yamar even for the second starting center back spot. It's who gives us a better chance, Albert Rusnak or Alex Roldan at center back, and Kalani Kosa-Rienzi at right back, or Yamar or Tino Lopez at center back and Alex Roldan at right back. And you can kind of go around and find a lot of those battles. I think the Jesus Ferreira one is another good example where, okay, so maybe you think he's one of your best 11, but is he better on the right where you push Jordan up top, or is he better on as a center mid with Jordan on the right? And you can kind of go, and so it's not as simple as your best 11. It's sort of your best 11 group, and it's putting this together, this holistic lineup that I think creates some interesting challenges.
Well, and even if you're looking at that back line and making the consideration of setting aside Jamar for now, because it seems like even if he's involved in training, he's probably not ready to play.
No, I would say he's weeks away at least from playing.
But going back to sort of the framing that you posed to Schmetzer today of that decision isn't necessarily Alex or Kosa-Rienzi at right back. It's sort of Alex at center back and Kosa-Rienzi at right back versus Tino Lopez at center back and Kosa-Rienzi at right back, or Alex at right back.
Right.
But that decision also has repercussions farther ahead where,
absolutely.
None of the guys who are going to play right wing are really like sideline players. They're all going to cut in a little bit to accomplish different things.
And it's also sort of the way that the Sounders system right now is designed, is that the right mid is not expected to be a out and out winger. They're really expected to be more of a, to use a Schmetzer term, a pocket winger. And almost every game, the left winger is the highest player on the pitch.
Yeah. So then you start getting into, okay, well, if it's going to shape out like that, do we get the most out of playing with these guys in this arrangement where Kosa-Rienzi then is the guy hugging the sideline and providing width, or is it more valuable to have Alex at the right back position where he's coming forward, but when he does, he tucks into the central midfield group and you dominate by possession a little bit more. And, I think just always worthwhile from a fan and analysis perspective to consider all of the varying complexities in these decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it makes it a lot of fun to put together a best 11 because I think multiple people can have best 11s that have equal viability. And it's not as simple as how do we fit the most talent on the field? It's how do we fit the talent that fits together the best? And, these are good problems that the Sounders have created for themselves. And I think it also allows them to look at injuries as an opportunity more than as a, something to get too worked up about. And, we've been talking for years about what's the Sounders best 11. And invariably, we don't really ever find out because very rarely do they have the same group starting week in and week out where you can really point to it and say, this is our best 11. This gives us the best chance to win in a must-win game. And that's frustrating. But it's also kind of fun in a weird way, I suppose. But one of the other interesting developments this year to me has been the emergence of Snyder Brunell, who I think is part of that best 11 right now. I can't say that definitively, but it does. Every time I see him, I'm more excited about seeing him again.
I 100% think that Snyder Brunell is part of that best 11. I can understand why they have utilized him at times, in one instance from the beginning of a game, but sometimes flexing him out to that right. I do think, especially given how effective the team's play was last year with Obed Vargas as the pair to Christian Roldan in that midfield, having Snyder as Christian's partner in particular, where he is the most Obed-like of the current midfield offering, but is so much more incisive, I think, getting forward.
I really do think that there's something to be, and it's sometimes, I don't know that it always shows up in the metrics, but I do think when you watch him play, you see there's a forward-looking aspect to his game or a progressiveness to his game where every single time he gets the ball, it's how do I advance it? And sometimes it's his body positioning, sometimes it's his vision, but it's always progressive. Like I would be fascinated to look at sort of like a radar of his passes, and I would imagine that he has a much lower percent of passes that are square or backwards as compared to Obed, even as recently as last year.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking of the assist for Jordan's goal in the last game was the first assist he's had this season, but it's certainly not the first pass like that he's had. Yeah. And it seems like reliably once a game, whether he plays 15 minutes or 90, he has a handful of moments where he just picks out a pass that you would be a little bit surprised to see like a DP number 10 pull off, or he dribbles through, not just out of, but through danger and creates an attacking opportunity out of virtually nothing in a way that we really haven't seen from a Sounders midfielder before.
No, I don't know that we have. I mean, maybe you could, I don't know. It's funny because it's such a different league, but maybe Clint had this and I don't want to get too crazy.
Right.
But, and Clint also had a flair to it. Like what? I'm not comparing Snyder to Clint Dempsey, but what I am comparing is that the mindset of being every time I touch the ball, there's something special might happen.
I think there is a understandable comparison in the ability to recognize opportunities and a confidence in the ability to take advantage of them between those two players. I don't think there are a ton of other similarities in their games, but
he's not trying
to slap guys in the dick.
Wasn't going there, but that too.
He's not trying shit.
Right. He's not just trying shit kind of just to skill check.
Yeah.
which Clint certainly was fond of doing. And I am really getting excited about him. And there was, there's been an ongoing discussion in the Sound at Heart Discord. Speaking of which, if you aren't in that and you want to get into it, just become a member at the supporter level or above. We don't mention that enough, I feel like. But we have a lot of good discussions in there. But one of the discussions that seems to be ongoing is every time Snyder does something good, we better sign him to a U22 contract now. And it started off, I don't know how completely seriously people were suggesting that. And I know for me, my immediate reaction, certainly in preseason and early in the season, was just like, look, guys, you don't pay people money just to pay them money. You have to be compelled to do it. But it's getting pretty close to that point where, like, I don't know that they can go through this summer and, like, if I think they could very easily justify this summer offering him a U22 deal, especially if they have open spots. Now, there is the challenge to that, and I will just bring this up, is that if you sign someone to a U22 contract, you have to elevate them into your senior roster. He currently occupies a supplemental roster spot, so that gives them more flexibility. And so I don't necessarily think that you should be rushing out to fill one of your very limited senior roster spots. But every time he plays the way he did against Dallas, it becomes easier and easier to justify, and you have to start getting more and more worried about, what's it going to take to let him go.
Yeah, I think also the reality is that currently none of your U22 roster spots are occupied.
That is true.
And so you start getting into a conversation of, you've accumulated, maybe hoarded all of these assets.
Right.
What's the point if you're not going to use them?
Absolutely.
That is an asset that you could use and, maybe preempt a second coming of the Obed Vargas situation. Because I do think that's not getting into a spot where he's running down his contract because he wants a move abroad and It's going to be easier on a free, but that if they play their cards right, particularly because of the ways in which their games are different, that Snyder Brunell is much more of an attack-minded 8 in his ability to create, his box crashing ability. Just his understanding of that part of the game is so much more advanced than Obed's was at this same age. Even though Obed had, a couple years as a consistent contributor and starter at the first division level at that point, Snyder doesn't have that same level of experience. But it is notable that, not even 9 months ago, he made his first team appearance, and he has already reached a point where he's played every single game this season. Mm-hmm. I think it's easy to overlook that because some of those have been like 12-minute cameos at the end of a game, but he's appeared in every single game and has started something like 8 of the 12. And the ones he didn't were basically games where they rotated.
Right. He's also started as an 8, as a 6, and as a right winger or pocket winger, whatever we want to call that position.
Sure.
But they're fine. My point being that they're finding ways to get him on the field.
Yeah. I think if we are hemming and hawing about whether he's part of the ideal 11 for this team, the Sounders seem pretty confident that he is. Right. But my point is that there was an ongoing, maybe some of it is real, genuine opinions during last season about Obed being, and I think Obed is a $10 million player, maybe more. Snyder Brunell could very easily, by the time he leaves the Sounders, be much more than a $10 million player, especially if he continues to grow and develop the way it looks like he is. Locking that down so that you don't end up in a situation where you take a sort of cut rate deal because it's better than not getting anything. And, we don't need to rehash the Obed deal, but I think we are moving into a situation where it will be very good business to sign Snyder Brunell to a U22 deal.
I would totally agree with that. And what also does help is that Obed can, he's still not totally broken through at the Atletico, but that he's consistently getting minutes and he's getting starts. Like he started, I think, a handful of games now at this point.
Yeah.
Interestingly, he still hasn't made his Champions League debut, which is like kind of I guess it speaks to the depth of that roster that you can have a player like that playing as many minutes as he does in league play and not being able to get on the field at all in Champions League, which is just kind of an annoying thing because I've been tracking the ex-Sounders to play in Champions League, and it's never happened before. No one from the Pacific, I don't think anyone from the Pacific Northwest, we're including Alaska as part of that, has actually played in Champions League. Yes, it's true. Neither DeAndre Yedlin, nor Henry Wingo, nor Casey Keller actually played in the formal Champions League, which is a strange but true reality. Anyway, that he continuing to do well, I think also does well to build the Sounders brand and sort of give foreign scouts some confidence that whatever is happening here is translatable.
Yeah.
And everything I'm seeing from Snyder is very, very good. So the other element of the sort of asymmetrical nature of this position battle is how Jordan Morris fits into it and sort of the situation around him. And I think there is an open question right now where not necessarily his best position, but where he is most useful. You know, he looked, I thought, really good against FC Dallas playing as a right winger. I think there's a very valid argument that as a number 9, he could still be an elite number 9. But it's not as simple as that because there are other considerations here.
I think the real benefit with Jordan is we have seen over the course of his career, and particularly in the last few seasons, that he is incredibly productive at any of really 3 sort of 4 if you want to play him in a 2 forward setup where he's either leading as the point man in a 2 forward set, or, you know, if you played him with De Rosario and De Rosario is the target man and Jordan sort of makes runs off of him, I think you can make an argument that that's 2 separate positions. And then he can also be very productive from the wings. And there's not a huge statistical drop off from any of those spots.
No, it's funny. So, I actually looked this up this week and I was surprised to see that, you know, I didn't dig too deeply into it, but he's got almost the exact same strike rate at both wide and central positions. But anyway, go ahead.
So it is less about needing to necessarily find the position that he is most effective and which position can you play him at to get someone else into their most effective position, where if it is that you feel like the best potential benefit for the team is playing one of Masovsky or De Rosario up top to really get them rolling, Jordan making runs from whether it's the right or the left, you get a little bit of the benefit of a guy like Christian or Snyder making a late run into the box from deeper in midfield that most teams in MLS just are not going to cover that run as effectively because it's coming from a different spot than they anticipate. Mm-hmm. Jordan making the run he made on his goal more than the Ferreira goal, because that one is just sort of him chasing down
almost a clearance.
Yeah. But with Jordan in those positions, those clearances become dangerous balls to a certain extent. But Jordan making that run from sort of the right channel allows him to not get picked up really by either the left back or the center back, because he's sort of outside of both of their zones and teams aren't playing man to man very much. So he gets to take advantage of those miscommunications and spaces a little bit more than he would by just making runs off of the back shoulder of a center back. Mm-hmm. So it is Jordan taking a more agnostic approach to his own position and just wanting to be on the field allows the coaching staff to consider more, who else they can get the most out of.
Speaking of which, did you happen to see the interview where he talked about his agnostic attitude towards? I guess he said it also in the post game of Dallas.
I did not see it. I have read it multiple times, but
yeah, I thought it was an interesting moment for him where he is someone who doesn't always speak. I don't want to say he doesn't speak honestly, but he does not often speak in a unguarded way. And I felt like this was a rare time this week where he was sort of honest about his internal emotions. And, I can see where he's coming. He, if you haven't read it, he basically said that at times during his rehab, he was sort of losing the love for the game. And I think that's understandable for a guy who's in his 30s now, who's got kids at home, who's married. And, the whole reason you're doing this is to play, is not to rehab. And he's spent an inordinate amount of time over the last year in the training room and not getting to play. And I can definitely see how that would sap your love for the game.
Especially a guy like Jordan, who, to your point, is not the most open communicator. And even for all that, he kind of gets flack for his emotiveness on the field at times and the way his shoulders will drop in the past if something doesn't go right, whatever. But we've also seen him be much more expressive in celebrating goals and things like that over the last few years. A guy like him being stuck in the gym, rehabbing from an injury while the attack flows in a way that it hasn't for him during much of the time when he's been one of the guys for the team, probably an added weight of like, what am I doing here? What's the point of?
Yeah. And I think there's also an element of, you go back to the early season last year where he was very excited about playing with Jesus. He's good friends with Paul Arriola. Yeah. I'm sure he was excited about that. And obviously Arriola got hurt. They were both rehabbing together, I suppose. So maybe that was some off-field chance for them to bond. But I do think there wasn't a significant element of sort of missing out. Like I was so excited to be playing with these guys. I can't get on the field with them. This sucks. And I'm sure that was going on this year, especially as Arriola was getting back and scoring, and having these games. And, he missed a big chunk of Club World Cup. He only got in as a sort of cameo appearance in the Club World Cup. He didn't really play much of a role in Champions League this year. And I'm sure there is a lot of like, look, I don't have that much time at this point.
Yeah.
And I want to be out on the field. And I hope that he is taking that as I hope he's taking that attitude to heart where it's like, it really doesn't matter where he's playing. If he's on the field, he's much closer to doing something he loves than if he's not on the field and getting wrapped up in that whole thing. So hopefully I think this will be good for everyone. And I think the Sounders offense does seem to be clicking a little bit more. They have an opportunity to get right this week for sure. But why don't we take a break here? We'll talk about Sporting Kansas City after the break. You're listening to Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network.
Sounder at Heart has been around in one form or another since 2009. In 2026, though, we make a pretty significant evolution when we go analog. Yes, that's right. In the year of our Lord 2026, we are publishing a real-life magazine. We're calling this thing 4, as in Sounder at Heart 4.0, but we're stylizing it as IV because we absolutely love Roman numeral. And if you want to refer to it as IV, that's cool too. The first issue has a comic book style cover that was hand-drawn by local artist Kevin Newbern. Features by Tim Foss, Susie Rance, and Charlie Boehm, a statistical deep dive by Kat Bush, a Q&A with Brian Schmetzer, a column by G. Willow Wilson, and photographs by Noah Reif, Max Aquino, Mike Russell, and Jane Dershowitz. I could not possibly be more proud of the work everyone put into making this, and I think you're going to absolutely love it. If you'd like to get your hands on one of these limited edition copies, we're currently selling them for $15 on our website. Get yours now. Nos Arietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Haxon Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Haxon Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at haxonferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to haxonferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Haxon Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Welcome back to Nos Audiatis on the Sounder at Heart podcast network. All right, so Sporting Kansas City, they are in a bad way. And I don't mean this in a same way that in 2024 when the Sounders played Sporting Kansas City and they were 10 games unbeaten or winless to start the season, where that team, you could explain it away a little bit. They were missing some key components that were coming back, actually, as it was timed right when they were playing the Sounders. The underlying numbers were not too bad either, if I remember correctly, during that 2024 run. But really, there is no way to slice this. Sporting Kansas City is an awful team right now.
It is illustrative that two different outlets have done like long form dives into the collapse of the Peter Vermees empire. The house that Peter built has fully fallen. They, over their last 6 games, they have given up at least 3 goals and lost by at least 2 in all 6 of them, which includes a 3-0 just sweep by Colorado Springs Switchbacks.
Yes, the
in US Open Cup.
Team.
That's not great. It's not what you want.
No.
6 losses running. They just got absolutely bulldozed by the Chicago Fire, 5-0. They've got some dudes, Dejan Joveljic is a good player. He'll grab you a goal as he's done in 2 of the last couple games. The only 2 goals they've scored, I think, in their last 5 were both by him. But it's not a team that strikes fear into the hearts of many.
No, he scored their last 2 goals and 3 of their last 4. Actually, if you go back to, I take it back. He has actually scored 5 of their last. Geez, they are a mess of a team. Dejan Joveljic is essentially their offense right now, and you can kind of run down the metrics, and they're last in just about every single one of them. They're last in goals scored. I think they've given up the 2nd most goals. They have the worst XG. They have the worst expected goals allowed. They, of course, have the worst expected goal difference. They've taken the fewest shots. They have, like the 3rd or 4th lowest possession percentage. It's bad. It's really, really bad. And the main reason, I guess, is, you can put it on Peter Vermees, I suppose, but I'm a little reluctant. My impression of that is that it wasn't so much Peter Vermees' fault as it was Peter Vermees sort of holding it together as long as he could.
Yeah, the Soccer Wise guys dove into this somewhat earlier this week. Not somewhat. They did a pretty good explanation of it. But Peter Vermees was the structure, and they tried at a couple points to build some scaffolding around it so they could add on to support that structure, and the scaffolding kept falling down. And then eventually Peter Vermees leaves, and the guy that you've brought in to sort of take up the mantle behind him doesn't have a track record of success. And as a result, you just are sort of like building the plane in midair, but you haven't been able to take off yet. And
like they have some the good news, I guess, is that they have some flexibility. They have not overcommitted to a bunch of big contracts that are going to sort of be albatrosses. But the absence of that is that they just don't have a lot of talent on the roster. Their roster is literally short. I think they have the fewest players on first team contracts in the whole league. And then they made a somewhat curious coaching decision when they brought in Rafael Vicky, who I guess has a good reputation in some specific ways, but he has been the head coach of an MLS team before, and they weren't good.
That good reputation might just be people who are friends with Rafael Vicky and his immediate family members, because he did not come out of his stint as a U.S. youth national team head coach covered in accolades. I have been anti-Raf Vicky since that, I think, U17 World Cup.
Was that the one with AOC
and Danny Leyva, I believe. Okay. Which was also, I think it was one of the first looks at Gio Reyna, which that tournament also is where I became an anti-Gio Reyna guy.
Ricardo Pepi was on that team too, right?
I believe so. Ricardo Pepi started over AOC quite a bit, and Gio Reyna was heliocentric and did absolutely nothing with it. And that all seemed to be Rafael Vicky's decision making.
Right.
I just don't think he knows how to put a team together or motivate a team once it is there.
I mean, you can kind of, he's one of those people who look, this is going to be unfair, but you look at him, he's got the glasses, he's clean cut, he's got that, I don't know, what is it, a Swiss accent? I don't know.
I do believe he is Swiss.
Okay, so he's got a European accent of some sort. And it all sounds like very smart and analytical, and it just, he has this presentation of being put together well, but then there's just not a lot of you hear him talking, and it's not like it's filling you with confidence. I mean, it's a lot of, I don't know what you're supposed to do. He's in a bad situation, but a lot of excuses, a lot of we're doing the best we can type stuff.
All sizzle, no fondue.
Yeah.
For a Swiss guy, I don't know that they're famous for their steaks, but Brian Schmetzer made multiple comments about they're not overlooking this team. It's a potential trap game. That he thinks Rafael Vicky knows how to put a team together, and they've got some good guys. I think that is a reasonable stance to take if you are the head coach of a professional team, because you shouldn't overlook any opponent. I think doing so sets a bad precedent. It puts your own team in a bad position. We are not responsible for the team's performances, and jinxes aren't real. So there's no reasonable circumstance where the Sounders should not expect to go into this game and walk out with a sizable goal tally and all 3 points, and maybe get a guy fired. I don't know.
Yeah, it would be interesting. It would be interesting if that's something that's on the table. I guess our coach, a first-year coach being fired at this point in the season would not be probably the most unheard of thing in the world, but it would certainly be a bad sign, and maybe indicative of the state of that roster. Their best player in some ways, other than Dejan Joveljic, has probably been Manu Garcia, who does seem to have some creativity in him. He gave the Sounders a little bit of trouble the last time they played, if I remember correctly. And look, this is an MLS team. They have some players who in their moment are perfectly capable, but there's really no, barring some weird, early red card or two, this is not a team that the Sounders should be competitive with.
They've got somewhere around 20 guys on professional deals. Anything can happen. When the ball gets rolling, it could be, the Sounders' luck really swung for the San Jose game. Maybe this is the pendulum swing where they rack up chance after chance and shot after shot, and ball just don't go in net. And some weird penalty or own goal, or just Dejan Joveljic being a good player and combines with Manu Garcia and gets a goal, and that's the only goal in the game. That's possible. We have seen the Sounders play defense at a caliber that should limit the likelihood of that.
Right.
I'm not going to worry too much about, a 1% possibility.
No, it's definitely a team. I mean, I guess if you're looking for reasons to build up your skepticism, the Sounders do have 3 home games coming up against teams they are presumed to be, they're currently battling near the top of the conference. So those will be, you could imagine them maybe losing focus a little bit and looking ahead to those games. Brian Schmetzer has talked extensively this week about trying to make sure that doesn't happen. It is a road game. It is a 11:30 a.m. local start time. So if you are setting your schedule, I would urge you to, in my mind, I didn't even realize it was 11:30 a.m. So a lot of your day ahead of you if you're a Sounders fan. But so I guess those are variables that, who knows, but this would definitely be one of those matches where if they drop points, they will be ruining it for a long time. I mean, it's not hard to imagine them coming up a point or two short in whatever standing position they're in and going like, God damn it, we should have had 3 against Sporting Kansas City.
I think maybe more important than just getting the 3 points against Sporting Kansas City, which they absolutely should do, is that this game affords them an opportunity ahead of a really important series of games against, I don't know that San Diego or the Galaxy are really going to be contenders at the end of the season.
Right.
But these are teams that it does you a lot of good to get results against. And with a big break coming up for the World Cup, if you can continue the momentum you've already built and maybe pick up some more steam there with a really strong performance against SKC, where, you rack up a big lead and you get some guys rest and you get some of the guys who are working back from injury, good little 20-30 minute runouts where they're building back up their rhythm, and you can keep that ball rolling as you go into this stretch of games to end the month, so that you are that much closer to the pointy end of the Supporters Shield race. You're in contention to be hosting important games at the end of the season. The points really matter later in the season, but the confidence matters a lot right now. And I think this is an opportunity to build that confidence.
Absolutely. And, throughout the year, I've been sort of tracking this stat that helps me visualize where they're standing against previous seasons. And I always like to look at the fixture and compare it to what they did last year. So this year, the Sounders, I believe, are 7 points ahead of last year's pace based on the fixtures that they've played. And they beat Sporting Kansas City on the road last year. So, which is to say that this is, if you don't want to start giving points back, this is where you gotta have to hold serve. So it's not even a bonus. This road game is not a bonus game the way that some the previous road games have been. So I think again, they play, it sounds like the next game that they play, or is that 2 games from now?
Might be.
Well, anyway, the San Jose home game is going to be a tough one. And that is one where that's another one where they won last year at home against San Jose. And I think we have to be prepared for the possibility that they will give some of those points back. San Jose looks like an absolute juggernaut right now. And if the Sounders got out of that game with a point, I think you would probably be generally pretty happy with it. But again, the only way that the math continues to work is if you claim the points that you absolutely know you have to. And so that's, if nothing else, that's a big reason to get these 3 points and to feel like you can't overlook this opponent. Anything else you wanted to talk about today, Tim?
I don't think so. I just looking, and it is, they run the California teams to end this month. San Diego is next, and then San Jose. we can wait to dig into those teams until those games come up. But I would just remind people, Jordan Morris loves playing against Sporting Kansas City
on the road too.
I'd like to see him count again.
I would like to see him count. I like that idea a lot. One other thing I'll remind everyone, today is the last day that we're doing the pre-sale on the new issue of 4, which is the Sounder at Heart magazine. You can get it for $10. And then after today, it'll go to its normal price of $15. We're hoping to send those out in early June so that they will show up to your door by the time the World Cup actually starts. Tim, of course, is in the middle of writing a feature that we have tentatively planned, and we are really running up against the deadline to get finished, which is not his fault. But so I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm not 100% sure what it's going to be. But we have that. Garth Logaway has actually told us that he will submit a piece for this magazine. We have at least 1 or 2 articles from Charles Boehm, who's been someone we've really loved working with. Leander Shalrikins, I think is how you say it. Sherlockins. He also submitted something. So a lot of notable authors are going to be contributing to this magazine. And I think people are going to, if you like the first issue, I think you're really going to like the second one. And then the chances are we probably won't be doing another one until the beginning of next season. So this gets your fix for print until then, I suppose. But all right, well, let's get out of here. Want to say thank you, of course, to our sponsor, Full Pool Wines. Thank you to all of you who are our subscribers and making this happen. I want to also urge you to go check out our YouTube channel, which is basically now moving over to Lobbing Scorchers. We are working out finalizing a partnership with Lobbing Scorchers where they're going to basically take over our video and social media content. Really excited about that. And with that, we'll get out of here. I'm Jeremiah Shan signing off for Tim Foss. This is Nos Audietis, part of the Sounder Heart Podcast Network, and we'll catch you next time.
Let's go Sounders. Yeah.